Hi, my name is Christian Devine and welcome to Retro View. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about the Arrow 4K Golden Harvest set, which I just got and will probably take me quite a while to go through everything on this amazing box set. And once again, it's like what an age of physical media to get this incredible 4K UHD set of all of the Bruce Lee films, The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, Way of the Dragon, Enter the Dragon, Game of Death, and multiple extras. Now, I'm not going to be able to obviously cover everything on the Arrow 4K, but I wanted just to touch briefly on a couple points. I also wanted to touch upon the 50th anniversary of Enter the Dragon, of course, and this is the brand new Warner Brothers 4K Dolby Atmos version featuring the theatrical cut and the extended cut with some extra footage. And it says 100th anniversary on the front, but that's for Warner Brothers, obviously, not Enter the Dragon. It doesn't say this is the 50th anniversary. And I would say this is a fairly bare bones release in terms of this film and what it represents. And I'll talk more about this. I'll do another retro review to go more in depth on the film. It looks fantastic in 4K. That's the most important thing. But a film of this stature that's been even released in the theaters deserves a much better presentation than this version of it. And compare that with the Arrow release, which is a Blu-ray, of course, because obviously Warner Brothers is releasing the 4K, but they managed to pack this full of extras that were not included on the Warner's disc. But we'll do a comparison and go into that in another retro review. Suffice to say, in 4K it does look spectacular. But I wanted to highlight my favorite disc in the Golden Arrow 4K set, and that would definitely have to be the final Game of Death, which I wasn't sure was going to be on here. I knew there would be some Game of Death material, but in my retro view of the original Game of Death from the Criterion set, I said, I just want to see all the footage. Just release all the footage. Release all the reels. And this is that. This is incredible. So it's all 11 reels, which were, I guess, finally found and put together and remastered. And so they put together basically what they call a video essay of the entire over 2 hours of footage with a really insightful commentary that's hard to disagree with and really kind of nails everything that's interesting about the film and even certain moments that may not work totally. But it does contain some absolutely incredible footage that I had no clue existed and is just wonderful to view for the first time in this gorgeous 2K restoration taken from a interpositive of the film. So it looks fantastic. It looks just great. And just to nitpick, in the only way that I know how to, the only thing I would disagree with in the entire amazing analysis and commentary is where they compare Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's character, the Guardian, to the Terminator as an influence, and I would disagree on that simply because the influence would be Yul Brynner from Westworld. But nonetheless, that's just a theory, and nobody can be right or wrong about that. But it is a wonderful commentary analysis and a deep dive into the making of Game of Death. Everything you ever wanted to know is on this particular Blu-ray. And to me, it's worth the entire Arrow set. And there's even more stuff that I'm going to discover on there. Now, when I mean includes all the footage, it includes everything, including footage shot from the outside for the first time. Footage that would have maybe been incorporated in the movie or not, but it's great to see this exterior footage that Bruce Lee shot. He's not in it, but he was shooting it. And there's just wonderful little moments that, that add to the mystique of the film and make it interesting. And I'm not certain that Bruce Lee would have made The Game of Death the way, even the version he was shooting. It's very likely he would have made substantial changes. He would have had to add entire story and character elements and to match scenes up. So it's possible that some of this footage might not have even been used in the final Game of Death version. And I think the Game of Death, this was just a way of Bruce to keep himself occupied and focused and working on something. And Enter the Dragon kind of pulled him away. But it's a fascinating look at the process of what went into this legendary footage, much of which was considered lost, I guess, or stored away, and now we have all of it. I don't think there's anything left. Maybe, something else could pop up, but there doesn't seem to be anything left in the vault. So I was glued. I thought I was just going to watch a little bit of the final Game of Death, and I ended up watching the entire thing, just fascinated, especially when you get to some of the more mystical elements. And then, the saddest thing is that there was no sound recorded because that's just the way the filmmaking style was done then. And I think they just wanted to get through the fight scenes. And so it didn't require a whole lot of necessarily dialogue. It easily could have been ADR. But I love Bruce Lee's kind of hip 70s style of dialogue, give us room to groove, and all sorts of, wonderful little lines that are very characteristic of his personality. And it gives you a totally different view of the Game of Death and how it plays out. And it comes across, honestly, as a little even less brutal. That sounds strange to say, but there's a lot more comedic elements and then mystic elements, and it's very interesting and very ambitious for what it is. And like I said, this one disc, and there's quite a few. Game of Death is the centerpiece, certainly, of this Arrow set, because there's 3 or 4 different Blu-rays in there with extra versions: Tower of Death 2, Game of Death 2, etc., etc., etc. And of course, Game of Death in 4K, which looks fantastic. So I'll talk more about the Arrow 4K set later, and definitely I'm going to go into the comparison, not really comparison, but a look at the 4K of Enter the Dragon, which just came out, which looks fantastic, but the packaging to me is very lackluster and doesn't really give proper tribute to Bruce Lee and what he represents, what the film represents. And there's so much more they could have put on there, and certainly the Bruce Lee fans would have paid, and certainly the Arrow set proves that, because it's sold out immediately, and there's more in stock now, I believe. And so it's certainly absolutely worth picking up. And so we'll talk more about Enter the Dragon later. So again, Arrow is to be commended for this fantastic set, and particularly the final Game of Death. So I highly advise you to seek it out if you're interested in Bruce Lee at all, and it's a must-have if you're a Bruce Lee fan. And the restorations, so far from what I've seen, look wonderful. I'll dive more into this later on, and thank you for retroviewing. Please like and subscribe if you so desire, and as always, walk on.